Imagine spending 3 years of your life being the perfect supportive wife, only for your husband to treat his ex like a queen and you like a total afterthought. That is exactly what happened to Lynn. For 3 long years, she endured the constant manipulation, the constant framing, and the complete lack of respect until the day she finally said, "I am done." She signs the divorce papers, walks away without looking back, and completely drops her disguise. Boom! As it turns out, she isn't some clueless girl from a small town. She is actually the crown jewel and sole heiress of a multi-billion-dollar empire. Now, her toxic ex is finally realizing what he lost and is desperate to win her back. But oops, too late, honey. Because Lynn is already moving on to someone far better, a true, top-tier billionaire who actually knows how to treat a queen. If you love a revenge story, lock in and subscribe right now, because this journey is about to get wild. Warren, you have 10 minutes to get to the hospital and apologize to Shirley. I stared at the text on my phone, a bitter smile curling my lips. Just as I was about to reply, another message came through. Warren, if anything happens to her, I will hold you accountable. The sharp, heartless words blurred in my vision as tears welled up. Warren Sterling, have you forgotten today is our 3rd wedding anniversary? I whispered silently. I had spent the entire afternoon preparing a lavish dinner. But the one who returned wasn't my husband. It was his first love, Shirley Taylor. Lynn, you really think you can celebrate your anniversary with Warren? She sneered. Don't you know Warren loves me, not an outsider like you? Shirley stood there with her chin raised, her scornful gaze bearing down on me. Get out of my house! I tore off my apron and hurled it at her face. What happens between me and Warren is none of your business. I stepped back to avoid her, but before I could react, the sound of screeching tires echoed from the driveway. Shirley froze. We both knew Warren was home. I yelled from the top of the stairs, but before I could say more, Warren burst through the door. Shirley, what happened? He exclaimed, rushing to her side and scooping her into his arms. Warren, don't blame Lynn. It is my fault. I made her angry, Shirley whimpered. She nestled in Warren's embrace. Lynn Beverly. Warren's eyes widened in fury as he turned to me. You cold-hearted Lynn. I didn't. I stammered, shaking my head as my hands trembled. She did this herself. Enough! Stop lying! Warren's bloodshot eyes bore into me. You've already taken everything from Shirley. What more do you want? Warren, I didn't. It wasn't me. I tried to explain, but Shirley cut me off. Don't blame Lynn. She clung to Warren's arm, her voice laced with false humility. It is my fault for getting in the way. I'll leave. This isn't your fault, Shirley, Warren said, his voice tender as he comforted her. Then he glared at me with disdain, his arms tightening around Shirley. I regret marrying you. His words struck me like a thunderclap. He regretted marrying me. I stood frozen. My breath, ruin. Warren, is that really how you feel? I whispered, my voice so hoarse it felt foreign to me. The pain in my chest was unbearable, as if my heart had been torn apart. How did it come to this? Spare me your pitiful act, Warren spat, cradling Shirley as he stormed toward the door. Just wait, I'll deal with you later. I stood there, drained of strength. As his words echoed in my mind, I stared at the messages on my phone, my eyes red and brimming with unshed tears. Warren, why do you want me to apologize to Shirley? I've done nothing wrong. Why don't you believe me? Ding! Another text appeared. This time, it was from Shirley. Shirley. See, Warren still loves me. Then, she sent me a photo. Beneath the photo was a caption From Shirley. Shirley. Last night he was with me. Do you know what we did? Just as despair threatened to overwhelm me, my phone rang again. It was Warren's sister, Esther Sterling. Lynn. Are you home? She asked impatiently. What do you want? I asked weakly. The maid's out with my mom. Come over and cook for me. I am hungry. I let out a bitter laugh and hung up the phone without a word. That evening, I returned to the villa from the hospital. The living room was dark, steeped in an unfamiliar, eerie quiet. Lynn? I called out, shrugging off my suit jacket as I headed upstairs. Usually, at this time, Lynn would greet me at the door with her gentle smile. She'd help me take off my coat and hand me my slippers. I admit that I liked her warmth. If it weren't for the fact that Shirley once bled for me, maybe my relationship with Lynn wouldn't be this strained. For a woman, such a thing was rather cruel. So, I had always felt a deep sense of guilt toward Shirley. But tonight, the oppressive silence made me question if I'd come to the wrong house. Lynn, are you already asleep? I pushed open the master bedroom door, hoping to see her familiar figure. But the room was pitch black. Flipping on the light, I found the bed empty, that unreasonable woman. She wasn't even here. A gust of night wind blew in through the window, and a piece of paper fluttered to the floor. Tossing my jacket onto the bed, I bent down to pick it up. It was a divorce agreement. The bold words leaped out at me, making my heart jolt. Was Lynn seriously planning to divorce me? Frowning, I scanned the document quickly. The reasons for divorce were infidelity, emotional neglect, and irreparable differences. As for the asset division, she claimed that she would voluntarily leave with nothing. Childish. I crumpled the paper into a ball and tossed it into the outsider. There was no way that woman would dare divorce me. She was just throwing a tantrum, expecting me to coax her. Well, I didn't have the patience for that. She would come crawling back once she cooled down. Just then, my phone buzzed. I smirked. See? I knew it. She is calling to beg already. But when I glanced at the screen, my mood soured. It wasn't Lynn. It was Shirley. Annoyed, I hesitated before swiping to answer. Warren. I feel dizzy. All of a sudden, I am scared. Can you come to the hospital and stay with me? Shirley's soft, delicate voice floated through the line, but it only irritated me further. I can't, I replied, exhausted. I haven't even eaten yet. I just want to rest. But Lynn still hasn't come to apologize to me. Shirley's tone turned aggrieved. Tomorrow, I said through gritted teeth. Lynn isn't home. Tomorrow I'll bring her to apologize. Just rest for now. Lynn isn't home. I thought I heard Shirley chuckling, but I hung up before giving it much thought. Sigh. Coo. My gaze fell on the framed wedding photo on the bedside table. In the picture, Lynn was radiant in her white gown, her delicate smile glowing with joy. Her eyes sparkled like stars in the night sky. I reached out, brushing my fingers across her lips in the photo. I had always known Lynn was beautiful, but I had never told her that. My compliments have always been reserved for Shirley. As I set the frame back down, unease crept into my chest. Unable to resist, I picked up my phone and dialed Lynn's number. The number you have dialed is unavailable. She had actually blocked me. A surge of anger flared within me, and I nearly smashed my phone against the wall. My face darkened, my heart pounding. This wasn't like Lynn. She was slipping out of my control, and it was driving me mad. I stormed downstairs and grabbed the landline, punching in her number again. This time, she answered. Relief washed over me. Of course, she wouldn't actually leave. It was just a game of cat and mouse. Have you had enough of this nonsense? I growled, letting my anger seep into my tone. "Did you sign the divorce papers yet?" Lynn's voice was calm, too calm, cold even. Her indifference stunned me. And I softened my tone instinctively. "Tell me what you want to buy. $100,000. Is that enough?" In the past, whenever I ditched Lynn to be with Shirley, I'd placate her with money. Yet, strangely, she never seemed to spend it. "Divorce," she said firmly. "Warren, I don't want a single cent of your filthy money." Her resoluteness left me speechless, and a heavy weight settled in my chest. "I am giving you one last chance," I said darkly. "We can leave this behind if you stop acting out." "Warren Sterling," Lynn sneered. "Are you a fool?" I said. "I want a divorce." "So now you want a divorce," I snapped, my anger boiling over. "Who was the one clinging to me 3 years ago, desperate to marry me?" "To be clear, it was your grandmother," Lynn retorted, her voice laced with sarcasm. "I saved her life and she insisted I marry you. But you know what? I admit I was blind. I regret it, okay?" "You regret it?" Ha! Fury surged through me, and the words flew out before I could stop them. "Fine. Come to the hospital and apologize to Shirley, and I'll sign the papers." "Is that a deal?" Lynn asked rhetorically. 1 hour. Bring the papers to the hospital." The call ended with a loud clunk as I slammed the receiver down. That unreasonable woman. Who did she think she was? I stormed back upstairs, digging the crumpled divorce agreement out of the outsider. There is no way she'll go through with this, I thought. For 3 years, she had been living off me like a parasite. If I could play my cards right, she would be on her knees, begging for forgiveness. When I arrived at the hospital, Warren hadn't shown up yet. I entered the VIP room he had arranged for Shirley. The moment she saw me, Shirley's face lit up with a smug smile. "Lynn, I knew you'd come. You are too afraid of Warren to defy him, aren't you?" "Is that so?" "That is what you think," I sneered. Shirley's expression twisted with anger as she grabbed a pillow. But the door handle suddenly turned. She immediately dropped the pillow, replacing her scowl with a soft, pitiful expression. "Lynn," she said gently, "I don't blame you. I know you are upset because Warren and I love each other. I'll apologize, okay?" "Save your performance," I snarled, disgusted. "What a shame that you never got an Oscar." Reaching into my bag, I pulled out a stack of photos and flung them at her face. "Take a good look at what you've done. Shirley, did you really think I'd keep putting up with your games?" "Lynn, enough!" Warren roared from behind me. He rushed into the room, placing himself protectively in front of Shirley, his eyes blazing with fury. "Aren't you done yet?" he snapped. "Warren," Shirley hid behind him, her crocodile tears flowing. "Don't blame Lynn. It is my fault. I made her angry. It is all on me." "Lynn." Warren's face turned livid as he growled. "Why can't you leave Shirley alone? She is so kind, yet you keep tormenting her." "Kind?" I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "Your kind Shirley sends me these every time she is with you. I've endured long enough before exposing these shameless deeds." I threw another stack of photos at him. The scattered images littered the floor, leaving Warren momentarily stunned. He hesitated before bending down to pick one up. The picture showed him asleep, his eyes closed while Shirley rested her head on his shoulder. "What is this?" His brow furrowed in confusion. "This isn't what it looks like. I must have dozed off on the couch. I didn't. And this one," I interrupted, hurling another photo at him. "Fresh out of the shower, huh? What did you do with her then?" Shirley made sure to leave that to my imagination. I am guessing it was something wild. "What?" Warren's face froze, his expression a mixture of disbelief and anger. He turned to Shirley. "What does this mean? I didn't do anything that night. I just took a shower. I was just joking with Lynn." Shirley whispered, curling into the blanket. I didn't think she'd take it seriously. Joking. I scoffed, my voice dripping with contempt. I am not here to apologize to you, Shirley. I am here to ensure your cheating lover, Warren Sterling, signs the divorce papers. Then I turned to Shirley. Shirley Taylor, seducing someone's husband, wrecking a family. Who is the shameless here? Take him. I am done with this disgusting man. I hope you enjoy being his next victim. I spun on my heel, meeting Warren's shocked gaze. My voice was cold and unwavering as I said, Mr. Sterling, please sign the divorce agreement. Lynn, Warren barked, panic creeping into his tone, but his frustration boiled over, and he shouted, That is enough! Have you forgotten? You caused Shirley to fall down the stairs, he added. If you apologize to Shirley, I'll let this go, and we'll go home. I haven't had a decent meal in 2 days. You haven't had a decent meal in 2 days? I laughed bitterly, tears welling in my eyes. What about me? All he had ever cared for was himself, and he never thought of the pain he had caused me. Why don't you let your mistress cook for you? I retorted. And about Shirley falling down the stairs, if you don't believe me, you'll believe the stairwell cameras, won't you? Warren, just sign it, and don't waste my time. Warren stared at me in shock, his mouth agape. He probably didn't expect me to be so resolute. Warren, Shirley cried from the bed, grabbing my hand in a faux display of sorrow. It is all my fault. If I hadn't fallen for you first, none of this would have happened. Warren, you should choose Lynn. I'll leave. Shirley's performance was so convincing that it almost earned my applause. Her delicate sobs and pitiful demeanor once again captured Warren's attention. Even though he looked defeated, Warren eventually pulled the crumpled divorce agreement from his pocket and signed it. I'll give you $3 million in the villa, he muttered hoarsely. If you regret this, you can come back anytime. Regret! I snatched the agreement, laughing coldly. Warren, I'd rather rot in unreasonable than regret divorcing you. Tai. Wed. Walking out of the hospital room, I felt utterly drained. 3 years of marriage were over, leaving me broken in a way that felt irreversible. On the outside, I looked strong, but my heart ached so deeply I could barely breathe. I felt like I was all alone in the world, but fortunately, I wasn't. I had someone even more important to me. I pulled out my phone and with trembling hands dialed a familiar number. Tears streamed down my face as I choked out. Grandpa, I want to go home. On the other end, my grandfather sighed, his voice warm and loving. My little princess, have you finally come to your senses? It was my mistake. I sobbed uncontrollably. I gave him my heart, but he never saw me. He is so cold and send me your location, he said firmly. I'll have your cousin pick you up right away. When I arrived at my grandfather David Beverly's manor, the front gates were ablaze with light. And he was waiting for me there. He was a billionaire with 2 sons and my mother as his only daughter. 10 years ago, my mother and I were in a car accident. I was saved by Warren, but my mother tragically passed away. Afterward, my father remarried in secret. His betrayal devastated me, and I severed ties with him, never returning home. As I stepped out of my cousin Willie Beverly's car, David opened his arms and hugged me tightly, his voice choked with emotion. My little princess, you've finally come to your senses. I can finally stop worrying about you. Grandpa, I clung to him, tears streaming down my face. I am sorry for causing you pain. I promised to give myself 3 years to try to make Warren fall in love with me. Now, I've failed, so I kept my word and came back. It is okay, sweetheart. It is all in the past now, David said, gently stroking my hair. You are ready to take over the businesses I've set aside for you, along with a portion of my shares. From this day forward, you are the princess of the Beverly family. Lynn! A bright voice rang out as my cousin Lacey Beverly approached. Darling, welcome home, Lacey. I pulled away from grandfather and threw myself into her arms, wrapping my arms around her neck. I've missed you so much. I am so happy to see you again. And you finally decided to come back, Lacey teased, pinching my cheek affectionately. I told you Warren wasn't worth it. Do you believe me now? I do. I nodded firmly, holding back tears. I was so blind, thinking I should marry him because he saved my life. Sweetheart, are you sure you didn't mistake someone else for your savior? Lacey asked, holding me close and gently patting my back. You always said your savior had a scar on the back of his left hand. Warren doesn't have one, does he? Her words stirred a long-buried doubt. I had wondered about this before. 10 years ago, I'd clearly seen a scar on the back of his hand, but when I reunited with him, it was gone. Yet, I still remembered what he looked like. So I'd convinced myself that he was indeed my savior, that the scar must have faded over time. Now, free from my blind infatuation, the suspicion resurfaced. Hey, don't space out on me. Lacey waved a hand in front of my face, snapping me back to reality. Honestly, I hope you did get the wrong person. But let's not dwell on that. Look at your clothes. That is no way for a Beverly princess to dress. She lifted the hem of my plain dress, prompting me to look down. She was right. My outfit worn while I was still at Warren's house was humble and unremarkable. Lacey, take Lynn shopping tomorrow, David said, handing me a card. Buy whatever you want. Clothes, jewelry, anything that catches your eye. If it is not enough, I'll add more. Thank you, Grandpa. This is more than enough. I kissed his cheek and hugged him tightly. Sede. Wentes you buy. The next morning, Lacey took me to a shopping mall. We had barely stepped into a boutique when her phone rang. Darling, I need to handle something for work. Look around and I'll be right back, she said apologetically, pointing to her phone. I nodded. As a famous actress, Lacey was always packed with all kinds of jobs, and I understood how busy she was. For 3 years, I'd been trapped in Warren's house, managing his life and household. Though money had never been an issue, I rarely indulged myself, let alone stepped into high-end stores like this. As I browsed the elegant dresses and dazzling jewelry, a bitter laugh escaped me. Why did I have to endure that humiliation? I tried on a few outfits and decided to buy them. While chatting with the sales associate about the season's latest trends, an all-too-familiar voice interrupted me. Lynn, what are you doing here? I turned around and froze. Of all people, it had to be Warren's mother, Fiona Sterling, and his sister, Esther. Esther stormed over and snatched the card from my hand, screeching, "What are you doing in a place like this? Where did you get the money? You unreasonable witch! How much has my brother given you?" "That is my card," I said coldly. "It has nothing to do with your brother." "As if," Esther sneered. "If not for Warren, where would you get this kind of money?" "She is right," Fiona chimed in. "Without my son supporting you, you'd still be in the countryside starving to death." "I'll say it one more time," I said, my tone icy. "This card is mine. It has nothing to do with your family." Esther's eyes darted to the neatly arranged shopping bags beside me, and she let out a shrill laugh. "Lynn, there is no way you'd have this much money. You must have stolen it from Warren." "Is that why you haven't been cleaning my house?" Fiona snapped. "You are off squandering my son's money instead." "I didn't steal anything," I growled, my voice trembling with fury. "Warren and I are divorced. What I do now is none of your business." "Divorced?" Fiona gasped, like she'd just heard the world's biggest joke. "You clung to my son so desperately, and now you expect me to believe you divorced him?" This can't be true, Esther snorted. You probably stole his money and ran off to enjoy yourself. I am calling Warren. I didn't want to see Warren, but it seemed the situation called for his involvement. I sat on the sofa in the lounge area, crossed my legs, and nodded coolly. Go ahead, let's get this over with. Esther dialed Warren, and within minutes, he stumbled into the shop. His tie was loosened, his shirt unbuttoned. He looked flustered, like he'd come in a rush. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. He wasn't at the hospital with Shirley. That was unexpected. Seeing me, Warren became a bit nervous. His eyes locked on mine as he asked, Lynn, where were you last night? Does it matter? I said with a sneer. I only need you to tell your family one thing, Warren. We're divorced. I haven't taken a cent from you now. Tell them to give my card back. Lynn stood before me, her elegant dress accentuating her graceful curves. Her golden curls framed her face, her makeup was flawless, and her demeanor exuded sophistication. It was as if she had transformed overnight. She was no longer the plain, dutiful housewife who revolved around me. She looked radiant, captivating even while I, exhausted from a sleepless night, hadn't even bothered to shave my growing stubble. Warren! Esther waved the card in my face. This has to be stolen. There is no way you'd give her so much money. I didn't, I replied, pressing a hand to my throbbing temple. I never gave her any money. Aha, I knew it. She is a thief, Fiona shrieked, pointing an accusing finger at Lynn. You country-bred thief! Accusations like that can have legal consequences, Lynn snapped, snatching the card back. Her voice was sharp with indignation. I wouldn't touch a penny of your family's filthy money. She reached into her bag and pulled out a check. Mr. Sterling, she said, her tone icy. Everything you bought me over the past 3 years is still in your villa. As for the money, this check more than covers it. I am giving it back to you. Now we're even. She called me Mr. Sterling. The formality of it struck a chord, a chill running through me. Then, she tossed the check at me. A simple piece of paper, and that detached address combined to pierce me in a way I couldn't explain. As she turned to leave, I instinctively grabbed her wrist. Lynn, did you find another man? Where did you get this money? Do I owe you an explanation? She retorted, her head held high, a cold smile playing on her lips. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice cutting, all you need to do is confirm that the money in this card isn't yours. It is not mine, I admitted, my voice betraying my unease. But who gave it to you? No comment, she replied with a haughty snort, her composure unshaken. Her reddened eyes betrayed an inner turmoil, and for a fleeting moment, my heart faltered. Lynn, I don't care if you are mad at Warren. Esther's shrill voice cut through the tension. But I still need you to iron my clothes and clean my room while you are at it, Fiona added, her tone icy. Just like last time, I've divorced Warren, don't you understand? Lynn's voice was laced with fiery defiance. Go boss someone else around. I've had enough of all of you. Their bickering felt like a confronted to my face. It ruined me. For the first time, just how my family had treated Lynn. I had ignored her and failed to see how they humiliated her time and again. It was clear she'd reached her limit. Warren. Esther turned to me, her expression outraged. Are you seriously letting your wife talk to us like this? She has lived off you for years, and now she is acting this arrogant? And threatening us with divorce, Fiona sneered. She was desperate to marry you. There is no way she'd willingly let go. Enough! I roared, my patience snapping. Yes, Lynn and I are divorced. And the way you've treated her is absolutely unacceptable. Divorced. Really? Esther froze, then broke into laughter. It is about time. A woman like her never belonged in the Sterling family. Exactly. Fiona chimed in, her words vicious as ever. If it weren't for your grandmother forcing the match, I'd never have allowed this underestimated girl to marry you. Warren Sterling, Lynn shook her head, her smile bitter. I wish you and your family all the happiness in the world, but as for you and me, this is goodbye, forever. With that, she grabbed her shopping bags and stormed off haughtily. Lynn, we're not done talking. I rushed to block her path. There is nothing left to say. She brushed past me without even a glance back. Talk to your family, we're over. Thou end. Fiona and Esther's voices continued to grate on my ears, but I couldn't make out their words anymore. My mind was elsewhere, consumed by one question. Who was Lynn with right now? Who had given her the money for the expensive clothes and jewelry she now wore? Yet her figure disappeared from view before I could get an answer. The check she'd tossed at me lay on the floor like a piece of outsider, the amount written on it mocking me. This was actually from Lynn. She wiped away our 3 years of marriage. That easily. I let out a hollow laugh. How had things come to this? Warren, a soft voice called out, breaking my thoughts. I turned to see Shirley approaching. She wore a flowing white dress, her chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders. Her complexion was pale, almost sickly. Warren, I waited for you at the hospital, but your assistant told me you came to see Lynn, she said, pointing toward the store entrance. I saw her leaving in a luxury car. A man was driving. A luxury car, driven by a man. My chest tightened at the thought. Darling, Shirley said sweetly, slipping her arm through mine. Don't be upset with Lynn. Maybe she has found her true love. We should just wish her well. Does your leg not hurt anymore? I asked, pulling my arm away. Her overly sweet tone grated on me. Did you really run out of the hospital like this? Oh, of course it still hurts. Shirley's expression turned pitiful. But I don't blame Lynn. I know she didn't mean it. Shirley, I sneered. Do you really think I still believe you? All those misunderstandings you created, you just wanted to drive Lynn and me apart. Well, congratulations, you succeeded. Warren, you are being unfair. Tears welled up in Shirley's eyes as she shook her head. I only did it because I love you. I just want to be with you. She raised a hand to wipe her tears, accidentally brushing back her hair and exposing the scar on her forehead. That scar she'd gotten it protecting me during an attack. Guilt weighed heavy on my chest. I am sorry, I muttered hoarsely. Warren, Esther interjected, wrapping an arm around Shirley's shoulder. Our grandmother didn't approve of Shirley before, but now she has dementia. Maybe you and Shirley can start fresh? I agree. Fiona chimed in eagerly. Shirley is the perfect match for the Sterling family. A true Taylor heiress, unlike Lynn, who is just a nobody from the countryside. I didn't respond, but Shirley leaned into me, her voice trembling with anticipation. Warren, my love, I've waited so long for this moment. Will you love me the way you used to? My cousin Willie picked me up from the shopping center and brought me home, where David was waiting for us to have lunch together. It was a shame Lacey had to leave for a social engagement. Otherwise, I'd have loved to share with her the drama she'd missed at the mall. Lynn, David said, slicing his steak with elegance, there is a business gala tomorrow evening. It'll be attended by top elites and aristocrats. Willie will accompany you. It is time you started building your network so you can better manage the businesses I've entrusted to you. Of course, Grandpa, I replied cheerfully. Since childhood, David had groomed me to take on the family legacy. I held an MBA degree and was more than ready to manage a portion of the Beverly Empire. My time in the Sterling household, far from being wasted, had only strengthened my resolve and skills. To Warren and his family, I might have appeared to be just a housewife, but they had no idea of the quiet strength and determination that fueled me all along. I couldn't help but chuckle at the irony as I glanced at Willie, who smiled warmly at me. "It'll be my pleasure," he said, sighed. Shoo. The next evening, Willie and I arrived at the grand gala. The moment we stepped into the opulent hall, murmurs and gasps rippled through the crowd. "Look, it is the Beverly family's eldest son. He is even more handsome in person. But who is the woman with him? Probably just another pretty gold digger, trying to climb the social ladder." I could hear the mix of admiration and gossip swirling around us, but it didn't faze me. My public appearances had been rare, and after marrying Warren, I'd all but disappeared from the Beverly spotlight. Their comments, however, didn't bother me. Willie and I moved gracefully through the crowd, nodding politely to acquaintances as we headed further inside. That was when I felt some unfriendly gazes burning into me. Turning to locate the source, I spotted a couple staring at us. It was actually Warren and Shirley. Warren looked as polished as ever in his tailored suit. His golden hair impeccably combed. He had always been dashing, and tonight was no exception. Shirley, dressed in a bold magenta gown, clung to his arm like a decorative accessory, her brown curls cascading over her shoulders. I could see their shock as they took me in. No longer the country girl they dismissed, but a stunningly radiant woman, exuding elegance and power. They might think they had seen it wrong, but they hadn't. Warren's expression darkened like a storm cloud. His eyes flicked to my hand, which was resting lightly on Willie's arm. Noticing my reaction to Warren's presence, Willie leaned down and whispered reassuringly, "Don't worry, Lynn. I am here." I tilted my head and smiled faintly. "No, Willie," I said. "They should be the ones worried." With my arms still entwined with Willie's, I strode toward Warren and Shirley. With a confident smile, for 3 years, I had endured for the sake of love, but now I was free and unstoppable. What was there to fear? As we approached, the contrast was striking. Willie and Warren stared at each other, their powerful presences evenly matched. Shirley, however, paled in comparison. Next to me, her flashy dress and exaggerated demeanor made her seem like a pretender desperately clinging to an identity she couldn't fully embody. Willie and Warren greeted each other politely but coldly. "Mr. Sterling, it is a pleasure," Willie said. "The honor is mine, Mr. Beverly," Warren replied. His voice was steady, though his eyes were glued to me. I knew what his gaze meant. He must be questioning my choice. He must have assumed I'd latched onto Willie as soon as I left him. A man more powerful and prestigious than him. Or maybe he thought I'd only been so quick to leave him because I'd met Willie. Either way, Warren's eyes burned with anger, jealousy, and disbelief. I knew my appearance today was stunning enough to attract every man, and Warren was no exception. It was ridiculous. Was he blind all those years? Shirley, sensing Warren's tension, tried to reassert control. She raised her voice, making sure others nearby would hear. "Lynn, what are you doing here? A business gala isn't the kind of place for someone like you." Her thinly veiled insult was an attempt to remind everyone of my supposed origins so that they might laugh at me. Before I could respond, Willie's voice cut through, icy and unyielding. "And who are you," he said, "to speak to Lynn that way?" Shirley faltered, visibly shaken by Willie's commanding presence. "Mr. Beverly, surely you don't know," she stammered. "Lynn is a divorced woman." Her implication was clear. Someone of Willie's stature would never associate with a divorcee. "Does being divorced disqualify someone from attending a gala?" Willie replied, his smirk dripping with disdain. "If so, I suggest you and Mr. Sterling leave immediately." Shirley's face turned crimson as she cast a desperate glance at Warren. But he stood motionless, one hand in his pocket, his face a mask of irritation. I took a step closer to Shirley, my voice sharp with derision. "Who are you to decide where I can or cannot be, Shirley? Mind your own business." "I am only stating the obvious," Shirley stammered, retreating a step. Warren still didn't intervene. "Mr. Sterling," Willie said, his tone dripping with mockery as he glanced at Shirley. "I must say, your taste in companions leaves much to be desired." Warren's expression grew darker, his gaze fixed on the floor. Willie gently patted my hand, still resting on his arm. "Let's go inside, Lynn. There are people eager to meet you." I knew he was referring to business associates, but I didn't miss the pointed implication that would irk Warren further. Why would I care? Everything that had happened so far was more than satisfying. As we walked away, Shirley's indignant voice echoed behind us. "Warren, are you just going to stand there and let them humiliate me?" I didn't hear Warren's response. Perhaps he led Shirley away to comfort her gently, but moments later, I heard someone's heavy footsteps. Then, my wrist was forcefully gripped. "Lynn," Warren growled behind me. "Come with me now." I wrenched my wrist free from Warren's grip and turned to glare at him. "Who do you think you are? Why should I listen to you?" Even as the crowd around us looked on, Warren, undeterred, grabbed me in a tight embrace, his voice low and seething with frustration. "How long are you going to keep this up? Lynn, enough is enough." "Warren Sterling," I scoffed bitterly, shaking my head. "You really think this is a joke? We've signed the divorce papers. We're over." "Let me go." "You are still upset," he countered, his arms tightening around me. "You don't mean this, do you?" This was the first time he had ever held me this tightly, but it was far too late. When I was hurt, longing for comfort, he had given it to Shirley instead. Most of the pain I'd endured had been caused by him in the first place. Wasn't it about time? I woke up. I pushed him away forcefully, smoothing the hair that he had mussed. "Mr. Sterling, don't embarrass yourself. Your precious Shirley looks like she is about to cry. You'd better comfort her." "Lynn," Warren started to speak again. But before he could, Willie stepped between us, shielding me. "Back off," Willie said in a menacing voice. His fists clenched. "Unless you want to find out what my fist feels like against your face." His tone left no room for doubt. He meant every word. Shirley scurried over, clutching Warren's arm. "Warren, let it go. You already dumped her. Just leave her be." "Shut your mouth," I snapped, my eyes blazing. "Let's get something straight. You destroyed my marriage, and it was me who dumped him. Keep a tight leash on him, and don't let him bother me again." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. By now, it was clear to everyone. I was Warren's ex-wife, and Shirley was the shameless woman who had broken up our marriage. Warren's face darkened as the judgmental whispers swept through the room. He shrugged Shirley off and stalked toward a quiet corner. Sulking with a glass of liquor, Shirley glanced back and forth between Warren and me, then stomped her foot in frustration before hurrying after him. It felt like a victory, yet my heart remained heavy. Turning to Willie, I murmured, "Sorry, I need some air. I'll head to the terrace." "I'll come with you," Willie offered, concern etched on his face. "No need," I said with a faint smile. "I am fine. I just need a moment alone." "All right." Willie relented, his hand gently squeezing my shoulder for reassurance. "I'll be nearby. Call me if you need anything." I stepped onto the terrace, a glass of champagne in hand, letting the cool night breeze calm my nerves. To my side, the glass window cast back my reflection, the elegant dress, the graceful form, the flowing locks. "Lynn!" Shirley's voice, venomous and shrill, shattered my peace. She held a glass of wine and followed me. With her hypocritical mask off, her delicate, pitiful act was gone, replaced by a sneering, witch-like demeanor. She must have been spurned by Warren and now sought solace in tormenting me. I smirked inwardly and subtly activated the camera on my phone. Bring it on, Shirley. Let's see who wins this round, I thought. You didn't divorce Warren out of sincerity, Shirley hissed, her tone dripping with malice. This whole act, it is just to make him chase after you again and showing up here. You just want him back, don't you? I looked at her as one might a ridiculous clown, unable to stifle a derisive laugh. I don't know what other people might think of me, but surely everyone here knows you are the home-wrecking tramp who destroyed my marriage. Isn't that enough for you? Lynn, you brought this on yourself, she snarled, grabbing my wrist. Before I could react, she upended my champagne glass, dousing herself with the contents. Why, Lynn, I came here to apologize, and this is how you treat me, Shirley wailed dramatically, her voice drawing the attention of the nearby guests. I could hear the murmurs growing. Shirley had achieved her goal. She wanted them to see me as the aggressor. Warren emerged from the crowd, his brows furrowed at the sight of Shirley's wine-soaked dress and trembling figure. Lynn, how could you? He demanded, his voice heavy with disappointment. Warren, don't blame Lynn, Shirley sobbed, collapsing into his arms. I know she doesn't like me, but I only wanted to apologize. I don't blame her at all. Really, I totally understand. The crowd's pitying glances shifted toward her. Her sorrowful cries made them judge her less for destroying my marriage. Their whispers turned from disdain for Shirley to subtle condemnation of me. Could they really believe I was such a person based on her performance alone? I sighed, debating whether it was even worth defending myself. Before I could decide, Willie showed up. Without hesitation, I grabbed the glass of red wine from his hand and poured it over Shirley's head. Her scream pierced the night air as the cold liquid drenched her. Save your act, I snapped, almost unable to suppress my disgust. Can't you come up with something new for once? This tired performance of yours is nauseating. Lynn, Warren barked, stepping protectively in front of Shirley. That is enough. You still believe her lies? I asked with a sneer. Well, I suppose she is not entirely wrong this time. I did just pour wine on her. But I held up my phone. Don't you guys want to see what really happened just now? Willie took my phone and saw the video still recording. He ended it and began playing it back. Holding the phone high, he made sure everyone, including Warren, could see the footage. The video clearly showed Shirley's twisted expression. Shirley! Warren's face darkened as he shoved her away. His voice was laced with disgust. I can't believe you'd stoop to this. The crowd erupted in laughter, and Shirley's face burned red with shame. She stumbled forward, reaching for Warren. Darling, please, let me explain. Enough, Warren snapped. I shouldn't have brought you here. With that, he turned and walked away. Shirley turned her hateful gaze on me, her eyes gleaming with malice. I could almost hear her silent yet malicious vow. You'll pay for this, Lynn. Lynn. Willie turned to face me, his tone curious. You know this woman, right? What is her last name? Taylor, I said. Shirley Taylor. Honestly, sometimes I think she is some kind of divine trial. We even have the same family name. The old one, though. But my dear, Willie's gaze met mine, a hint of worry in his eyes. I caught some gossip earlier. She seems to be Raynor Taylor's daughter. Raynor Taylor. My heart seized up. Hearing that name, my father's name, really caught me off guard. It had been 10 long years since my father last acknowledged my existence. Not once had he reached out to David to ask about me. Did he even care if his daughter was still alive? The answer was clear. He didn't. 10 years ago, after the car accident that claimed my mother's life, I was bedridden, recovering at David's house. While I was grieving, he was already remarrying. His new marriage seemed far more important than my mother's death or my survival. Such a father wasn't worth longing for. Only heartbreak lingered in his place, but I had never connected Shirley to him before. Could it be that she was the stepdaughter brought into Rayner's life by his second wife, Willie? My voice faltered, the words heavy on my tongue, sensing my unease. Willie wrapped an arm around my shoulders. I am here, sweetheart. You don't need to face this alone. It must be a coincidence, right? I tried to convince myself. Surely it is just someone with the same name. The odds are slim, Willie said quietly. But don't worry, I'll look into it. Whatever the truth is, it doesn't matter anymore. You are no longer tied to the Taylors. You are a Beverly now, our beloved little princess. I chuckled bitterly, my gaze fixed on the passing scenery. Could it really be a coincidence? Shirley stole my father a decade ago. And now she had taken my husband too, but I couldn't wallow in sadness just yet. Despite feeling a bit worn out, I had to admit the party had been a great success. I'd met so many interesting people, potential future business partners. Said, the next morning, Willie accompanied me to the company I would soon take over. I caught my reflection in the glass doors, a sleek businesswoman in a tailored suit, poised and confident. I liked what I saw. Gone was the housewife who lived for others. This was the real me, refined, ambitious, and in control. We rode the elevator to the top floor, where my spacious office awaited. Settling into the plush chair, I began reviewing documents brought in by my secretary. The assets under my name were staggering: shopping centers, luxury hotels, international restaurant chains. Dozens of businesses generating billions of dollars in revenue. Well, I said to Willie with a grin, this should keep me busy for a while, but for now, I want my identity kept under wraps. Let's wait until I've proven myself before we announce I am the owner. As you wish, Willie replied with a chuckle. I'll tell everyone you are our new general manager. Perfect, I nodded. I won't let you down. Good luck, my dear. Willie kissed my forehead before leaving the office. Immersed in financial reports, I felt invigorated. My years of education and experience now had the perfect stage. A knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. Come in, I called. The marketing director stepped in. I remembered Willie mentioning her. Julia, a sharp and efficient professional. You are the new general manager? Julia flashed a faint, not entirely friendly smile. Yes? I replied with an air of confidence. Is there a problem? My calmness seemed to throw her off for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. I reviewed your background. You've barely worked a day in your life. Until recently, you were just a housewife. Her tone dripped with condescension. It seemed she was determined to teach me a lesson. What dirty tricks did you use to get Mr. Beverly to put you in charge? I almost laughed at her audacity. Interesting accusation, I said, narrowing my eyes. But I am not sure why you'd jump to such conclusions about someone you barely know. If you are done, you can leave. I am busy. That position should have been mine, Julia snapped, slamming a hand on my desk. I've worked tirelessly, delivered great results, and earned it. Then keep working hard, I replied coolly. The company rewards those who perform. But why were you parachuted into this role? She demanded, her voice rising. Did you sleep with Mr. Beverly to get it? I've been working here for years. This position should be mine. Julia had crossed the line. I stood, my tone sharp as steel. Watch your words. I admire your dedication, but don't mistake my patience for weakness. One more baseless accusation, and I'll sue you for defamation. Julia's face paled, but she wasn't done. Tossing a stack of papers onto my desk, she sneered. Big words, huh? Prove yourself. Then, this is one of our toughest projects. If you can close it, I'll acknowledge you. If not, don't expect me to follow your orders. I flipped through the documents, quickly identifying glaring issues. I asked Julia, feeling rather confused. You dropped the profit margin to 3% and still couldn't close the deal. Is that all you can do? Even if you succeed, what value does 3% bring to this company? What would you suggest? Julia's bravado faltered, her tone less confident. The client is notoriously difficult. Nothing less than 10%, I said firmly, closing the folder. Wait for my good news. In the meantime, you'd better go back and focus on your own work. I met Robert Fields, the businessman I was negotiating with, at a quaint coffee shop. We exchanged pleasantries before sitting down and ordering our preferred coffees. We didn't dive into business right away. Instead, we talked about the weather, the environment, history, and eventually football. When our discussion veered toward football, Robert seemed both impressed and delighted by my enthusiasm. Miss Beverly, I must say, you are not only a sharp businesswoman, but also a fascinating conversationalist. I think we'll be more than business partners. We could be great friends. I look forward to that, Mr. Fields, I replied warmly. By the way, I could introduce you to one of the football stars we just talked about. His eyes lit up with excitement. That would be incredible. I accept your deal. This is the beginning of our cooperation. Our negotiation concluded smoothly, securing an agreement with an impressive 11% profit margin for my company. We toasted our partnership with coffee and continued chatting pleasantly. During this time, I texted Lacey, asking her to connect me with a couple of football players she knew. Before Robert and I even finished our drinks, one of the players reached out to me directly. Hi, you are my idol Lacey's cousin, right? The player greeted with a friendly tone. Yes, I responded cheerfully. A good friend of mine would love to meet you. My pleasure, he said. Here is my number. Pass it along to your friend, and we'll arrange something soon. I thanked him and relayed the number to Robert, who was overjoyed and immediately called the player to ask him out. This is beyond my expectations, Robert said, practically glowing with excitement. Meeting football stars, chatting about the game. I'll be bragging about this for weeks. Congratulations on your new friendship, I said with a smile. I hope you enjoy your time together. Miss Beverly, you are truly remarkable, Fields said, shaking my hand warmly. I'll make sure to introduce you to other business associates of mine. That would be wonderful. Thank you, I replied, knowing this would help expand my network significantly. Sebund. After Robert left, I exited the coffee shop, feeling elated. Rain had started falling unexpectedly, and I realized I didn't have an umbrella. As I dashed across the street toward the parking lot, a black car suddenly swerved, dangerously close to me. The car wasn't slowing down, but just as the car was about to confront it with a cold gaze, a strong arm yanked me away from the road. I tumbled into a firm, broad chest as the vehicle sped past, barely missing me. For a split second, I couldn't breathe. My mind flashing back to the car crash that had taken my mother's life 10 years ago. The situation had been almost the same. A wild car had dashed toward us, but my mother had shielded me, sacrificing herself to save me. My heart raced wildly, and my face was damp from rain, sweat, or maybe tears. It was impossible to tell. Everything felt like a nightmare. Are you all right? A deep, velvety voice spoke above me, resonating like a cello. I instantly realized that I was in a man's arms. I looked up to see a tall, striking man holding me. He seemed like a guardian angel sent by the gods. For a moment, I thought it was Warren. His features were eerily similar. But no, This man was different. He exuded a rugged strength and maturity Warren lacked. A magnetic aura that made my pulse quicken. What is wrong with me? How can I be drawn to a stranger like this? I asked myself. I am sorry, I stammered, gently pulling away, my cheeks burning. He was so handsome, and I couldn't help but feel captivated. Somehow, I even felt I belonged to his strong embrace. Thank you for saving me. If it weren't for you, I'd be— That car was suspicious, he interrupted, his tone serious. I saw it parked nearby earlier, and it seemed to be waiting for you. Then it suddenly charged straight at you. Waiting for me, I repeated, confusion clouding my thoughts. Who would target me? I had lived as a housewife for years, rarely leaving home. You are drenched, he noted, picking up an umbrella from the ground and holding it over me. Can I give you a ride or help you report this to the police? No, thank you. I managed to smile. My car is just across the street. I'll be fine. But could I have your phone number? This man saved my life after all. I'd like to thank him properly if possible. No need for that. He seemed to see through my mind. It was nothing, but have we met before? I looked into his attractive, ocean-like eyes, trying to place him. You know, I feel the same, but I can't quite remember. Well, as long as you are safe, he said, handing me the umbrella. Take care. Before I could say more, he walked away, his long strides carrying him across the street, rain cascading over his broad shoulders. I watched him go. A strange flutter stirring in my chest. This feeling, I'd never felt it with Warren. I handed my umbrella to the beautiful girl. As I crossed the street in the pouring rain, I was soaked to the skin. But somehow, my heart felt at ease. Perhaps this was the reason I came here today. However, I hadn't come to this city willingly. The day had started with an inexplicable urgency. A voice in my head, persistent and insistent, telling me, you must go there now. Hurry. It felt like a pull I couldn't resist. So I abandoned my original plans and ruined the road. Buddy, hurry up. Step on it faster, the voice urged. Let me clarify. I didn't suffer from split personality disorder, but today it felt like another part of me had taken over, guiding my every move. When I finally arrived in this city, rain began to fall, matching the storm brewing inside me. I had been here many times for business, yet I had never liked this place. There was something about it that repelled me, so I rushed to finish an errand and head to the parking lot, eager to leave this place. Just then, a strange scent wafted through the rain, a delicate, almost ethereal fragrance. It was calming, even intoxicating. Within seconds, I felt my mood improve a lot. I stopped and raised my umbrella higher, scanning for the source. Then I saw her. A petite, graceful figure emerged from a nearby coffee shop. It was a young lady. Her tailored suit accentuated her curves, her high heels elongating her slender legs. She didn't have an umbrella, but as she walked in the rain, her pace was quite brisk. Her golden curls cascaded over her shoulders, framing a face of perfection. Her blue eyes were as captivating as sapphires. She walked lightly, holding a leather portfolio close to her chest, the rain soaking her, yet not dampening her radiant smile. My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, I thought I saw my late wife. Catherine, I whispered. I didn't like this city. In fact, I even hated it. It took away the one I loved most, my wife, Catherine. 3 years ago, she passed away in a hospital. The doctors failed to save her, but I knew they had done their best. It wasn't their fault. I could still see the moment she was wheeled out, a white sheet draped over her lifeless form. She left me forever, and the despair broke my heart. But now, watching this girl walk through the rain, her gestures so reminiscent of Catherine's, I felt a fleeting sense of peace. She might be an angel sent by the heavens. When she tucked her wet hair behind her ear, my chest tightened. The resemblance was uncanny, yet I knew she wasn't my Catherine. My heart throbbed painfully, and I frowned in agony. 3 years. I still couldn't forget Catherine's smile, her warmth, her every little habit. She was my everything. I felt frustrated and wanted to take a puff. Just then, a black car parked nearby suddenly came to life and lunged toward her. She screamed, panic flashing across her face as she stumbled backward, her heel catching on the curb. She was about to fall, and the car showed no signs of slowing down. I dropped my umbrella and bolted toward her. Gladly, I reached her just in time, pulling her into my arms and out of harm's way. The car swerved past us, spraying water in its wake, and disappeared into the rain. I hugged her tightly, knowing she was targeted. That car meant to target her, and all I wished was that the camera nearby had caught what exactly happened. "Are you okay?" I asked. Surprisingly, my voice was softer than I expected. She quickly pushed herself away before lifting her gaze to meet mine. Then, she thanked me politely. Her sapphire blue eyes held a quiet strength that completely captivated me. At that moment, a realization struck me with the weight of inevitability. I had come here for her. Say. That wasn't an accident, I told her. My voice grave. This was someone planned it. A conspiracy, she asked, her delicate brows knitting together in confusion. This wasn't my first brush with the inexplicable sensation of danger. I had experienced it before on the day my life fell apart. It was a fire, a calculated act of destruction that consumed my family. My parents and my wife, Catherine, were trapped inside. I arrived too late to save my parents. By some miracle, I pulled Catherine from the flames. But her injuries were devastating. Despite the doctor's best efforts, she faded away in the hospital. The memory was a blade that never dulled, slicing through my heart every time I let it surface. I had ignored the ominous feeling that had shadowed me that day, dismissing it as paranoia. But now, I knew better. That sense of dread wasn't just fear. It was a connection, a silent cry for help from those I loved. But when I returned, everything was too late. This time, I heeded the call. Despite the rain, I dropped my work and came to this city. "You should be cautious," I said, bending to retrieve the umbrella I had dropped. "Think carefully. Who might want to hurt you?" The girl nodded and then looked at me. "Have we met before?" she asked. I couldn't answer her. I thought we might have met before, but I couldn't recall when. She seemed to share the same thought. Then, she asked for my phone number, probably intending to thank me later. "That is not necessary. I was just lending a hand," I said, declining her request. I didn't want to see her again. To be honest, I wanted to avoid her. Holding her in my arms had stirred an uncontrollable feeling in me, one that filled me with guilt. Catherine's death was a barrier I couldn't overcome. Carrying a heavy heart, I got into my car before leaving. I called a friend in the police department. "Hey, buddy, can you check something for me? The surveillance footage near Nightshade Cafe on Bay Avenue?" "Yeah, just a few minutes ago." The near-miss car accident still rattled my nerves, but I managed to reach the office without further incident. An 11% profit margin. How on earth did you pull that off? Julia was flipping through the documents on her desk, her eyes practically sparkling with excitement. She looked up at me with newfound admiration. "I am impressed, Lynn. Just playing to their preferences," I replied with a small smile, giving her a wink as I leaned on the office chair. "After all, I am known for being resourceful, aren't I?" Oh, Lynn, I've clearly been too quick to judge you," Julia admitted, a bit sheepishly recalling the harsh things she'd said about me earlier. "Dinner tonight. My treat as a sincere apology for being so rude." Sounds great. I nodded. Now was the perfect time to smooth things over with key colleagues. How about Maggie's Bistro? How end? By the time we got off work, the rain had stopped, and the evening had settled in as Julia and I arrived at Maggie's Bistro. To my surprise, I'd only recently learned that this popular health-focused restaurant chain was actually one of my own properties. With its reputation for high-quality food, it had become a favorite for socialites and celebrities alike. Many of them held memberships to enjoy its exclusive offerings. But as soon as we entered, my mood soured. Sitting at a table nearby was someone I could happily do without Esther. She was dining with another woman, and upon seeing me, leaned toward her companion with a smirk. "Look over there, that is the free maid my family enjoyed. She did the chores better than the actual staff. Too bad my brother Warren finally kicked her out." "Oh, so that is Warren's ex-wife." The woman across from her cast me a disdainful glance. She must have been rejected by the whole family. "Lynn," Esther waved at me, a smug look on her face. "Perfect timing. My shoes got some salad dressing on them. Come over and clean it up, would you?" Julia gave my arm a light tug, whispering, "What is going on here, darling?" "Just some mad woman barking," I replied under my breath, my irritation flaring. "Watch me handle this." And with that, I strode over to Esther's table. Esther's smirk widened, clearly pleased with my approach. "Lynn, maybe you should beg me to put in a good word for you with Warren. I know you don't really want to leave him. You must be practically starving by now, aren't you? Are you done?" I stood over her, smiling coldly. "Enjoying the food here, are you? Of course, I am a proud member of Maggie's Bistro. I adore the food here." Esther popped a piece of vegetable into her mouth, looking down her nose at me. "Oh, and by the way, I almost forgot to ask, are you here looking for a job? Face it, you are destined to serve me. Well, since you are so fond of the food, let me help you enjoy it faster." With that, I picked up her plate and shoved the Cobb salad right into her face. "Ah, you unreasonable!" Esther screamed, scrambling to her feet and grabbing a napkin to wipe her face. "What is wrong with you?" her friend shrieked, glaring at me. "Isn't it obvious?" I said, nonchalantly wiping my hands with a napkin. "I don't appreciate rude customers. I'd like her out of my restaurant." "What did you just say?" Esther stammered. Bits of salad and dressing still stuck to her hair, making her look utterly ridiculous. "You think you can throw me out? You are nothing but a server looking for work here. You are supposed to be serving me." She barked, jabbing a finger toward me. "Is that what you think?" I turned to Julia, smirking. "Could you call the manager? Maggie's Bistro has certain standards, and it is high time I clarified them." Julia seemed taken aback, looking confused. Esther burst out laughing. "Lynn, are you out of your mind? Giving orders to the manager here? That is rich?" "Yes, Lynn," Julia added, whispering to me. "Maggie's Bistro is part of Beverly Group, but we can't just change the rules on a whim." "Well, as the heir to the Beverly family, I can certainly make adjustments to the rules," I declared loudly. "Every Maggie's Bistro location across the country is under my name, and I have every right to place certain undesirable guests on a permanent blacklist." "The heir to the Beverly family," Julia gasped, her eyes wide with shock. Her expression seemed to say, "Have I been overlooking something huge?" "What did you say?" Esther's laughter stopped, her face incredulous. Then she scoffed. "Lynn, stop pretending. You are just a low-class nobody. Do you think sharing the same last name means you can pose as the Beverly heir? Keep it up, and you'll be talking to the police soon." "Fine," I replied coolly, smirking at her. "Let's see how this plays out." I took out my phone and called Willie, instructing him to summon the restaurant manager to meet me. Within moments, a man in his 30s hurried over, bowing slightly. "Excuse me, which one of you is Miss Lynn Beverly?" That would be me, I replied with a nod, and then pointed at Esther. Please check Esther Sterling's membership status. From this moment on, she is banned from Maggie's Bistro permanently. None of our locations will welcome her again. Yes, Miss Beverly. The manager responded immediately. I'll handle it at once. Lifting my chin, I looked down at Esther. Shall we, or do you need help finding the door? You unreasonable, Esther spat, her face flushed with rage. What? Did you hook up with a real Beverly after Warren dumped you? I said get out now. I snapped, pointing toward the exit. With an indignant huff, Esther grabbed her bag, her face a deep shade of red as she stormed out, practically stomping her way to the door. Lynn. Julia's wide-eyed gaze settled on me, her voice barely a whisper. So you are actually my boss? Julia looked at me, her eyes bright with surprise. I shrugged and gave her a smile. I hadn't planned on telling you this soon. So who was that woman just now? Julia craned her neck, glancing toward the door, as though she might still catch sight of Esther. Some madwoman, I said simply. Forget her now. What do you feel like eating? The manager led us to the best table in the house, and soon it was filled with dishes. We started savoring the meal. As Julia speared a piece of cheese, she glanced at me, her eyes filled with curiosity. I'd love to hear your story, darling. If you are up for sharing. Not just yet, I replied with a small smile, shaking my head. There are some things I am still working through. To happier days ahead for you then. Julia raised her glass, her tone warm. Cheers, my friend. To happiness for both of us. I clinked my glass with hers, and we both laughed. We spent the rest of dinner chatting about work, makeup, and even men, thoroughly enjoying ourselves. Suddenly, my phone rang, interrupting our conversation. A quick glance at the screen showed a number from the police department. I felt a flicker of confusion. Had I done something wrong? Excuse me, darling, I need to take this, I said. Of course, she replied, shrugging as if to say it was no big deal. I stepped into the hallway and answered the call. Miss Lynn Beverly. This is Officer Charles Hunter from the East District Police Department. The man's voice was steady and professional. Good evening, Officer Hunter. This is Lynn Beverly. What can I do for you? I responded. I got your number through the investigation. There is something I need to confirm. This morning near the Nightshade Cafes, you were almost targeted by a black sedan. Yes, I answered, realizing I'd guessed right. Thankfully, a gentleman intervened just in time, or things could have ended very badly. We've tracked down the driver. He claims he was just drunk, but based on our experience, this doesn't seem so simple. My pulse quickened, a faint unease settling in. Could someone really be trying to unreasonable me? Charles continued. Until we get to the bottom of this, I'll be keeping an eye on your safety. I may also need your cooperation for the investigation. Of course, thank you, officer. I nodded, though 1,000 questions swirled in my mind. Who would want to ruin me? The events of my marriage had simplified my social circles drastically. If anyone had a reason to be angry with me lately, it would be the Sterling family, or perhaps Shirley. But who would actually go this far? I wondered, feeling a chill creep down my spine. The Sterlings looked down on me. Would they bother to eliminate me outright? Could it be Shirley? Hadn't she already gotten what she wanted when she took Warren? As a cold shiver ran through me, another thought struck me. Officer Hunter, I said, clearing my throat, adopting a serious tone. If I may ask, what made you look into this incident? I thought it was just an accident and didn't report it. There was a brief hesitation before Charles replied. That is not something you need to worry about, ma'am. In any case, I'll update you with any progress. And if you come across anything that might help, please let us know. He sounded like he was sidestepping the question, and he ended the call rather abruptly. As I stood there, the image of the man who saved me earlier crossed my mind. Oddly, his silhouette seemed to overlap with a memory of Warren from a decade ago. He'd refused to give me his contact information and wouldn't even tell me his name. I wasn't sure if I'd ever see him again. And oddly enough, I felt disappointed. Strange, I thought, shaking my head. Hi. Bay. After dinner, Julia and I walked out of the restaurant together, and there, leaning against a car with his hands in his pockets, was my ex-husband, Warren. Just my luck. I said goodbye to Julia, planning to walk the other way, but Warren strode over, stepping right in front of me. Lynn. Julia paused, looking between us. Do you need any help? No, Warren answered for me. This is a family matter. Family matter? I felt my anger flare up, but I didn't want to drag Julia into this mess. I waved her off, signaling that I'd handle it. All right, Lynn, but message me when you get home, she said, giving me a supportive look, and reach out if you need anything. Such a sweet girl. Watching her walk away, glancing back at me a few times, made me feel grateful. Turning back to Warren, I glared, "Get out of my way." Once upon a time, I'd looked forward to seeing Warren every day, hoping he'd come home from work. Now, all I felt was apathy, maybe even disgust. What happened between you and Esther? She called me in tears. His voice held a note of reprimand. Oh, I scoffed. Are you here to defend your sister's honor? I came here for you, Warren said, reaching to grab my arm. Lynn, who is the guy you are seeing? Things haven't gotten that bad between us, have they? What are you talking about? I sidestepped his grasp, my tone dripping with mockery. Or did I somehow forge your signature on our divorce papers? I know you are upset with me. All right, it was a mistake. I'll keep my distance from Shirley from now on, and as for her, well, enough! I cut him off sharply. I don't care what is going on between you and Shirley. But speaking of her, I suspect she might have hired someone to run me down. She'd better hope I don't find proof of it. What did you say? Warren frowned. Shirley hiring someone to hurt you. I told him about nearly being ruined in my mind by the car earlier that morning. To my surprise, Warren chuckled. Lynn, you've got it all wrong. Shirley's just a gentle soul, a little timid. You really think she'd hire someone to hurt you? Sure. She is very gentle, I sneered, feeling a wave of nausea at his words. Protect her well, then. Let's hope she doesn't slip up. I pushed past him, clutching my bag tightly as I headed toward my car. Lynn! Warren shouted after me, his voice tinged with frustration. Whose car is this? Come back! I'll take you home. It is none of your business. I rolled down the window just long enough to reply, then revved the engine and drove off, leaving him standing there in my rearview mirror. I watched as Lynn drove off, her car disappearing down the road, leaving me standing there in the dust. The way she looked confident and self-assured, she seemed like a completely different person, and that expensive car she drove off in. Which man bought that for her? She was becoming someone I barely recognized. Someone completely out of my reach. Was the divorce not just a whim? Is there someone else in her life? Or maybe something else? Thinking back on how she threw Esther out of Maggie's bistro, I couldn't even blame her. Esther must have provoked her. Just how had my family treated Lynn in the past to make her despise us all so much? And what about Shirley? Could it really be true, as Lynn suggested, that Shirley might have hired someone to hurt her? Everything felt like it was unraveling. And I was completely in the dark, frustrated. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel and floored the gas, hoping the rush of wind through the windows would clear my head. When I finally got home, I was surprised to see the lights on in the villa. My heart leaped with wild hope. Lynn. Did she come back? I knew she'd come back. I barely parked the car before rushing out and hurrying to the front door. But as soon as I saw the shoes by the entrance, my excitement vanished. They weren't Lynn's. Those pointy, 4-inch heels belonged to Shirley. She was the only one who wore such impractical shoes. The thrill of a moment ago evaporated, leaving me feeling heavy and reluctant to step inside. Tend. Wendy, Warren darling. You are home. I was just making you a late-night snack. Shirley's voice floated out from the kitchen, a little too bright, but I could smell takeout food lingering in the air. As she started to approach me with open arms, I pulled back, frowning. How did you even get in here? I don't recall giving you a key. Oh, I got it from the housekeeper, she said with a hopeful look, stepping closer. I am going to be the lady of this house soon, so I thought it'd be fine. That is not what I said, I replied, irritation coloring my voice. I never agreed to marry you. Lynn's still furious, and I don't need this right now. Warren, that is not fair. Shirley's face fell as she looked at me, distressed. We were together first, remember? Lynn's the one who ruined us. It is not our fault. Did you forget? I said, meeting her teary gaze with a hard edge in my voice. You left me long before Lynn ever came along. You only came back after I was already married. Things aren't the same between us anymore. I am sorry, Warren, Shirley whispered, clinging to me as she began to cry. I was young and stupid then. I never truly wanted to leave you. Can't we just go back to the way things were? She reached up to wipe her tears, her hand brushing her forehead to reveal an old scar. I'd seen her do this countless times before, but tonight, instead of guilt, I felt an uncomfortable irritation. That is enough, Shirley, I snapped, trying to hold back my frustration. In was nearly targeted by a car today. You had nothing to do with that, did you? What are you talking about, Warren? Shirley's tears fell harder. You know I wouldn't hurt a fly, and yet here you are accusing me of trying to targeting Lynn. It hurts so much to hear you say that. How could you even think that of me? She buried her face in her hands, her whole body shaking with sobs. Despite my own irritation, a pang of guilt ruined me. I sighed and pulled her into a loose embrace. I am sorry. I overreacted. I just need some time to think. Warren, she murmured, wrapping her arms around my waist and nuzzling closer. Don't turn me away anymore. You know I've been waiting for this, for us. I opened my mouth to say okay, but my body betrayed me. There was nothing, no reaction, nothing that made me want her. A question I'd been avoiding crept into my mind. If it weren't for the accident and the scar she has because of me, would I even still be here with her? I didn't love her. I knew that much. All I felt was guilt. I wanted to make things right, to compensate for the past, not because of love. Even though I'd been by her side these past 3 years, I couldn't deny that my heart had been shifting, little by little, back toward Lynn. But whenever I thought of how Lynn was forced into my life by my grandmother, I couldn't bring myself to truly accept her. Warren, please, Shirley whispered, her voice breaking my thoughts. Her dress was already slipping down, one leg lifting to wrap around my waist, her hand reaching up to tug at my tie. Stop! I pushed her back in frustration. I am tired. I am not in the mood for this. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. You don't love me anymore, do you? Lynn's bewitched you. You regret divorcing her. Is that it? I don't want to discuss this, I muttered, loosening my tie as I headed toward the stairs. But Shirley grabbed onto me from behind. Warren, please don't do this to me. Go home, Shirley, I said coldly, prying her fingers off me. And that key! Give it back! I felt her still behind me, and I started up the stairs, only to hear a sudden thud. I turned to see her, crumpled on the floor. My heart jumped, and I hurried over to help her up. She clung to me, sobbing into my chest. "Warren, please don't leave me. You know how much I love you. Let's get you to the hospital." I scooped her up, heading toward the door, but a thought flashed through my mind, an image of her falling down the stairs just days ago. Since then, Lynn had been different. She'd filed for divorce, and our stable life had been completely upended. I hesitated, a sliver of doubt gnawing at me. "Shirley, could you really be pretending all this time?" It was another bright, sunny morning, and I felt an undeniable lightness. Ever since the divorce from Warren, freed from the constant anxiety he stirred in me, I'd found a new zest for life. Everything just seemed brighter, better. In the living room, Grandpa and Willie were seated amidst the luxurious classic furnishings. With Grandpa sitting so regally, he looked like a king, and tall, handsome Willie beside him could easily be mistaken for a prince. "Good morning, dear Grandpa. Dear Willie," I chirped, bounding over to greet them, giving each of them a warm hug. Willie held out a handful of car keys. "Here, these are for you," he said with a smile. There was a Bentley, a Maybach, an Aston Martin, and even a Bugatti. I stared at the collection, feeling slightly overwhelmed. "Isn't this a bit much? I still have a few cars in the garage from before," I said, looking between Grandpa and Willie, unsure. "You are the princess of the Beverly family." Grandpa chuckled as he stood up. "What is a princess without her chariot? Now let's have breakfast first, and then Willie will take you to the garage. Choose whichever suits your mood for the day." "Thank you, Grandpa. Let's eat then." I beamed, taking his arm and leading him to the dining room as Willie signaled the staff to bring in breakfast. After the meal, Willie took me down to the underground garage. As the doors opened, I was struck speechless. A dozen world-class luxury cars lined up in pristine rows, each one gleaming under the bright lights. Running my hand over the hood of a Bentley Continental, I said, "I love them. Every single one. Thank you both." "But Lynn." Willie's hand came to rest on my shoulder, and his tone turned serious. "There is something you need to know, and I want you to be prepared." A bad feeling settled over me, like a dark cloud creeping in. Was this about Shirley? Did they prepare all this to soften a blow? I already had a suspicion. It is about Shirley Taylor, isn't it? I gave him a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Willie. I won't let it get to me." Willie brushed a hand over my hair, his voice soft. "I looked into it. And yes, Shirley Taylor is indeed your father's stepdaughter. 10 years ago, her mother married your father. So it really was her." My chest tightened, my voice dropping to a low murmur. 10 years ago, my mother had just passed, and I was lying in a hospital bed, clinging to life. And yet my father remarried, didn't even care if I lived or fade away. Willie pulled me into his arms, comforting me. "That is all in the past now. Sweetheart, you are happy now, and we all love you. Everything the Beverly family has is yours." "But..." I shook my head, managing a bitter smile. That mother-daughter duo took everything from the Taylor family that was meant to belong to my mother and me, and I paused, swallowing back the urge to mention Shirley's possible attempt on my life. I didn't want to worry Willie. Instead, I said, "I am not letting them get away with it. So, what do you want to do?" Willie looked down at me, concern in his gaze, his hand firm on my shoulder. "I think it is time I go back to that place. I can't just let them take everything without a fight. If Shirley had merely stolen my father and my home, even ruined my marriage of 3 years, I might have let it go. I never cared much for those men anyway. But if she really tried to ruin me, that I couldn't ignore. I would never forgive her for what she did, and I wouldn't sit back while she continued her schemes. Lynn, you want to go back to that place. Willie's worry was evident. We can't agree to that. No one there will protect you. But I looked up at Willie, determination hardening my voice. That estate was once my mother's and my home. My mother and father built that company together. It is full of her legacy. I can't just stand by and watch those women take it all. It is not fair to her or to me. As I spoke, tears pricked in my eyes, and I could feel the rage burning inside me, making my vision blur. I understand, darling. You are absolutely right. Willie wiped my tears away. If that is truly what you want, I'll make all the arrangements. I can't just let you go in there unprotected. I'll explain it to Grandpa and won't let him worry about me. Besides, I am 24 now. I am not the same little girl I was 10 years ago. I gave Willie a firm look, confidence, and resolve filling my heart. All right, Lynn, we'll support you. Willie held me close. But remember, you'll always be our little girl. His words filled me with warmth, grounding me in the strength of family. I did tell Grandpa about Shirley, though I chose not to mention her potential attempt on my life. That was something I'd handle on my own. I didn't want to worry Grandpa, Willie, or Lacey. They'd just be concerned about me. Besides, Willie promised to handle all the arrangements and ensure my safety. I spent some time at the company, dealing with a few matters before delegating further work to Julia. She had become a trusted assistant, and I had full confidence in her abilities. Later that day, I met with Sarah, the assistant Willie had arranged for me. She was about my age, tall and athletic, with an air of professionalism and competence that I appreciated right away. That afternoon, Sarah and I made our way to the place I had once called home, the estate of my father, Rayner Taylor. To my surprise, old Turner, the butler, was still there. And he recognized me immediately, his eyes filling with tears of joy. My God, Miss Taylor, is it really you? You've come home. Turner's voice wavered with emotion. This man had watched over my childhood. To me, he was like family. I embraced him, my voice thick with emotion. Turner, how have you been? As I stepped back into this place, memories of my mother flooded my mind. Her presence was everywhere, like ghosts in every corner. It was as if she'd only left yesterday. Yet everything had changed. Everything that had once been ours, my mother's and mine, was now claimed by those shameless women. How could they? My mother might be gone, but I wasn't about to let them get away with it.